Hello and welcome back to FOF Live. We are back in the on-season a couple of days before the start of the World Series. As always, FOF Live is presented by you, super subscribers. So we thank you for your patronage and taking part in our coverage. And let me introduce the roundtable here today. Of course, we have Eli, Isaac, Kevin. We have new full-time employee of FOF, no longer an intern. We have Nate. And taking his place as an intern, joining us for the first time, Sean McCormick, and our guest, Ethan Stein. Fellas, how are we feeling?
Good, doing good, of course.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff has happened since the final pitch of the 2024 Marlins season. Eli, can you give us a little overview of what has happened since then for the Fish?
Yes, when last we left our heroes, a couple hours after the season ended, Skip mutually parted ways with Marlins organization, as did, maybe not so mutually, many of other employees in this organization, including his whole coaching staff, various other roles, both in baseball operations and otherwise. Otherwise, it's been quite quiet. There's been the official departures of some players we remember from the end of the season who were technically assigned to the minors late in the year. Nick Gordon, elected free agency. Yoni Chirinos, gone. Christian Pache, out of here.
Oh,
so far, it's been a lot of subtractions, and we are still in that limbo between actually filling the void, most notably with the Major League coaching staff, but of course with all these other spots in the organization. The postseason has gone on. We have been, particularly us, we've been maybe a little bit too focused on how former Marlins have been doing in the postseason. A lot of old friends competing with teams that made it deep, including plenty that are still on the rosters of the World Series teams themselves, both the Yankees and the Dodgers. Other than that, it's been very quiet. We're still in this interim period. The Arizona Fall League gets started up. We'll get into it a little bit later. Stuff like fall and winter ball going on. Little small things that I'm staying on top of. But for the moment, it's all going on behind the scenes in order to fill out what this organization is going to look like at various levels in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah. Isaac, you've been very in touch in terms of maybe how the Marlins managerial is going to be. How have you seen that so far for the Fish this offseason in terms of finding a new manager?
Well, the interviews have obviously started pretty much as soon as the regular season ended for those Miami Marlins. A couple of names that have already been reported included Craig Albernaz, the bench coach for the Cleveland Guardians. And today I reported that the Dodgers' first base coach, Clayton McCullough, a couple days before the World Series begins, by the way, he will interview for that managerial position later this week, was the verbiage that I got. I assume that means it will be tomorrow, given that game one is on Friday. So he becomes the latest active coach to interview for that position. And then aside from him, I believe the Tigers bench coach was also reported, George Lombard. He was interviewed already the week prior. And other than that, I believe that the Marlins bench coach over the last 2 years, Luis Urueta, he is also still in the running for the current Marlins for the open managerial position. So a lot of names that have been reported. McCullough today, and then with Alyssa Nakin as well. She's on their radar, but apparently not for a managerial position. We'll wait to see what happens there.
Yeah, and for the rest of whoever wants to hop on to any of you guys, maybe have a favorite in terms of these managerial stage, or maybe what you hope to see from one of these managers for the Marlins.
I think it needs to be noted that with each name, it has some sort of tie back to either Gabe Kapler or Peter Bendix. I think almost all of them, even Pipe, who was the bench coach last year for the Marlins. I think they're all pretty good candidates, honestly. I think we'll have to dive in a little more, obviously, on McCullough, who is the most recent name. But overall, I really don't have any complaints. I think they would all be pretty good. They all bring something different to the table, obviously. I think with Albernaz, you're probably looking more analytical, just the way that where he was beforehand, even before with the Giants, he was with the Rays for a very, very long time in their minor league system as well. So that's a pretty cool candidate. Lombard, he's I think on the younger side of the spectrum, as well as Pipe, who obviously would bring some continuity with potentially even bringing back some of his former staff from the Skip era. I'm not too sure on Alyssa Nakin. I know she's been around for a bit actually, so that'd be another cool one. Obviously, would become the first ever women to manage a baseball team, which would be pretty cool. At least at the major league level, we know Rachel Balkovic did it in the minors. Then McCullough, I'm sure he was around with Gabe Kapler. So I think they're all pretty good candidates. You can't go wrong with one unless I'm missing out on something. But I think they all have a pretty decent amount of experience. So I'm not, like, I think any of those names would be kind of fine for me. I would like Albernaz or Pipe. Those are kind of the two that I'm looking at, but the other three wouldn't be bad options to say the least.
Yeah,
the connections that they all have specifically to Kapler is what intrigues me. It's a more clear line between them and the Marlins assistant GM than it is to their president of baseball ops. Kapler specifically had Albernaz and Nakin on his major league coaching staff in San Francisco for, I think it was all 4 years in Albernaz's case, at least 3 of those years in Nakin's case. With Lombard and with McCullough, both of them were with the Dodgers for a while when Kapler was in their front office. Before he went to the Giants, he was in the Dodgers front office, mainly in player development, where both McCullough was there and then Lombard at the time as well. I think he was the first base coach there right before McCullough became their first base coach with the Dodgers. So he overlapped with both of them over there. And now, of course, we're at him having that single season of getting to know him a little bit this past year in 2024. So I find that curious. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it signals that Kapler himself will have some sort of a voice in this process, in addition to Bendix, of course.
Yeah, from what I understand, not only some sort of voice, he is, if not the main voice. Obviously, it'll be Peter Bendix that gets the final say, but Gabe Kapler is, I believe, sitting in on all of these interviews, and he is, I don't know if he's conducting them. I have no way to know, but he has a big role. And another connection I did see is that McCullough took over for Lombard in Los Angeles following the 2020 season. That's when Lombard went to Detroit, and McCullough, I guess he preceded McCullough over there in Los Angeles as the first base coach. So there's a little bit of a coincidence there.
And something to note with Lombard also, obviously he's currently under AJ Hinch, has been under Dave Roberts before. His 2 sons, George Lombard Jr. got drafted by the Yankees a year ago. Isaac would know them very well. They both attend Gulliver High School in Miami. So if you want to something just, of note, and doesn't have to be, not to put too much stock into that, but and he has a younger son, Jacob, who's in the class of 2026 and consensus top 5 player in that class. So just something to look out for. And I do like the experience from him. And of course, if you want to deal with continuity, Pipe is obviously the answer. But like you guys have said, any one of these 5, I'd be very content with.
I have asked a couple of people in the industry about Lombard, and they have really nice things to say about him. With Alyssa Nakin, sometimes as well. I heard mixed reviews about that one. I think the four gentlemen on the screen are the front runners for the job currently.
Man, I want to say these are all former players too, except Nakin, at least major league players. So, well, not Pipe. I'm not sure if Pipe was, but I know Albernaz, Lombard, and McCullough were definitely either they were major leaguers, and some of them were mainly in the minor leagues. So they have some experience, and they know obviously what a lot of these guys that are on the current major league roster, especially this young roster, are going through. So I don't think there's a bad choice. Pipe would be a pretty cool one, just given he could have that continuity. Once again, I would assume a lot of his staff that we saw with Skip potentially returns, and definitely seemed like there was some interest to keep him and even John Jay around. And obviously Jay now with the back with the Cardinals, but Pipe would be pretty, as Isaac would say, a pretty swell guy to go with. And he's bilingual, which is something I know Eli we had spoken about. That's kind of the plus. Obviously, it's not the main priority you're looking for, but it's a plus, and it helps him communicate pretty well with that clubhouse. And he's a pretty big players guy. He was very loved in that clubhouse, and I think we could all of us that covered the team this year could say that.
Yeah, I think it is immensely helpful if either the manager himself or herself, the manager themselves or the bench coach, is bilingual. That have somebody in a position of authority in there. Regardless of how you construct this roster, no matter what, it's going to be a very significant share that is mainly Spanish speaking. at the same time, we've seen the success speaks for themselves across the league. That managers, even if they aren't bilingual themselves, you can put it together in such a way that everybody's on the same page and understanding exactly what they're going to. Just a plus, in my opinion, and in yours as well.
Yeah, same question to Ethan and Sean about if you have a favorite in terms of maybe a managerial candidate, maybe even a candidate that they haven't maybe interviewed yet that maybe you have your eye on.
Honestly, they all seem like pretty good candidates. I know that experience is very important in this. A lot of these the candidates have had a decent amount of experience on coaching staffs, and Luis Ureta, he's pretty good. He's been here. Speaking about Craig, he's all these guys, most of them have experience with Kapler, so it's very interesting to see that a lot of them have those connections. Like, I mean, if we go back to maybe like Skips, like when they were interviewing him, was there like when they were interviewing him, was there really like a connection between like any of the, I guess, to the organizations or anyone in the front office when they, I guess, did those interviews? What was it, 2 years ago or something like that?
There wasn't really, and that's what made him somewhat of a surprising hire. It was a dark horse candidate, not to single out McCullough as being anything more than a consideration here, but it kind of is a similar pattern where it seemed like there were guys they were locked in on going back a few years. Of you'll unfortunately have to keep in mind that they were seriously interested in Pedro Grifol, despite how things eventually went really poorly at the White Sox. That was a guy that made a lot of sense. And Matt Cochuaro was another one they were laser focused in on at the same time, ultimately goes to the Royals as well. Whereas Skip kind of not came totally out of nowhere, but somebody that wasn't necessarily seen as that obvious pick from at that moment. And at the same time, it can work out pretty well, even without being able to see that clearly from the outside. The interview is somewhat important. And then ultimately it's the coaching staff these guys build around them that makes a big difference. So understanding, bring in guys that you feel complement your own skill sets and experiences as a manager, and deploying these people so that their role on the staff makes sense and collaborates in really creative ways. Ultimately, that is a pretty big factor here too, that regardless of who they pick, I don't think we'll have a I don't think we can knowledgeably say whether it's a great hire or not until they actually fill out the coaching staff around them.
It seems like this time around, in my opinion, I think the candidates are, I guess, more well-rounded, but you really can't determine that unless, you go years, like just like Skips, like those candidates, see what they've done.
Yeah, I think one thing with Albernaz especially is like he I think Skip obviously going into it had a little more experience, at least coaching wise. But Albernaz has only been a bench coach for a year, and it was this one with Cleveland. So similar to Skip, where he was only a bench coach for a year with St. Louis, and obviously both two former players. And Albernaz had a little bit of coaching experience prior to that. So that's a candidate that you're kind of looking at. It's just like kind of like Skip in terms of just the career path that they've taken to get to where he could be, and where Skip was. But I think that one definitely stands out. And maybe if I had to guess, it would come down to Albernaz and Pipe.
One more thing on this. Obviously, these are all the candidates that are accepting the interviews. I've been told also that there was at least 3 people that rejected to interview for this job. One of them was Mike Fetters, former player. I need to do more research on him, but there's been a few managers that have rejected to have declined to interview for that position. So, in case anyone finds that interesting.
What's his name?
Mike Fetters.
No, Mike.
I'm looking it up. I'm looking up on the fly. Is it the Mike Fetters that pitched in the big leagues for 16 years?
Yes.
1989 to 2004.
He turned down an interview with
Is he a coach? Is he a coach right now, or
yes?
No. It's be a pretty
He's
old
on the
one.
D-batch staff. I'm trying to see exactly what he does. Oh, he was just fired, actually. He was fired earlier this month. He was a quality control coach for the
Yeah, with quality control, yes. With the Arizona Diamondbacks as the bullpen coach as well.
Interesting. Seems like a pretty old guy.
Good segue, Kevin. We can go from old to young and talk a little Arizona Fall League. I know
Yay.
Eli wants to at least talk a little bit about the resurgence of Kep Alderman and how he's just been destroying the cover off the baseball. Eli, is Kep Alderman now maybe a good hitting prospect for the Marlins, or is just a flash in the pan?
It's an interesting question. I think to lead you guys in, we'll first just look at these overall stats from the Marlins players in the Arizona Fall League. There are 8 of them, and there's really just one of them that is having a lot of success, and that is Alderman, as we called out. He's the one. There's his slash line right there, 306, 378. He is slugging 833 in his first 9 games. There's 6 home runs in 9 games. Very nice display of power to all fields. The exit velocity is backing up as well. Like, he's hitting the ball harder than anybody else in that league, a league that includes plenty of top 100 prospects, even guys that are more elite than that. And he is somebody that is his carrying skill, his power to all fields. It's been really impressive so far. The strikeouts are still there for him overall. Yet still, he was the co-AFL hitter of the week in the first week of the league. He has to really cram in his production because he's going to get married this weekend, and he's leaving Arizona to get married. And if my understanding is correctly, he's going on his honeymoon right after that. So he's missing a big chunk of the league to uphold his personal commitments to his fiance, understandably. And then he'll come back at the end of the Fall League. There's the rest of the group, though. Jay Bashirs, Andrew Pintar. Pintar is the one that we had as a group collectively ranked as the highest prospect among this group. And I still stand by that because at least he has the versatility to play center field. He's a plus runner. He's been looking better there since a rocky first couple games. So Pintar overall, not much of a concern despite the underwhelming power numbers so far. And then on the pitching side, really the story there is the disappointment of Jun Suk Shim. Everybody was very intrigued to see what he would look like after having so little minor league experience at all to this point. Not that we're expecting him to have success in the Fall League, just that it would just be intriguing to see what his stuff looked like and what the Marlins got in that deal. Our understanding that the Marlins were very high on Shim when they made that trade with the Pirates to get him in exchange for Brian De La Cruz. In a small sample, just 2 appearances to this point. Maybe he'll make another relief appearance in the next day or 2. His stuff just has not at all resembled what it was believed to be in the scouting reports. Velocity down 3 or 4 ticks from what it was when he originally signed as an amateur. Also not really having any control of that stuff, and also getting barreled. He's already allowed just 1 home run. It feels like more than one. 1 home run, but several other very hard hit balls in that tiny sample so far. So he's gotten 5 outs. He's faced 11 batters. He's only gotten 5 of them outs. No strikeouts. Very few swings and misses in total overall. It's just concerning because you wouldn't think that he would go to the Fall League unless he was feeling healthy and recovered. And at the same time, this version of him just seems diminished from what he was when the Pirates signed him internationally a couple of years ago. Patrick Monteverde is starting right as we speak. In fact, I could do a live update. This is what the people come here for a live stream, is they want live updates on how Patrick Monteverde did in his 3rd start today. And to not go great, he went 2 2/3 innings, allowing 7 hits,
Jesus
3
Christ.
earned runs. He did have 4 strikeouts and no walks.
He's so cooked.
And that lowered his ERA. So people are seeing this and they're like, he's a 10.50 ERA. Yuck. Well, after today, it is down to a 10.38 ERA. So baby steps in the right direction for Patrick Monteverde, who's the oldest member of this Marlins delegation. Oh, but on the bright side, actually, Jay Bashirs, who, as you see, he was really struggling. He had no extra base hits prior to today. He just hit his first home run of the Fall League in this afternoon's game. So that's a baby step forward for Jay Bashirs right there.
That's next year.
Yeah, well,
that's what we've seen. We're not quite halfway through the Fall League. It's a 6-week league, and this is early on in the 3rd week of it. But it seems that, by all indications, Kemp Alderman will be their lone Fall Stars representative, if I had to guess.
Yeah,
I want to hear from Nate about this and what he sees from these guys. Kemp and maybe kept the only bright spot here and you're looking at it everywhere, and the pitchers just each one seems like each pitcher's faltering at the wayside.
Well, I'm really intrigued to know who he was the co-offensive player of the week in week 1, because I don't know who was really outsledding him. I didn't have to see that performance from the other guy. But aside from that, Kemp has definitely exceeded my expectations. Still striking out a pretty high clip, but that's what you come to expect from a guy like that. But just been an absolute light show from him. So very impressive. Jay Bashirs, who has honestly continued to disappoint after coming over at the trade deadline, which is not what you want to see. But if we're being honest, the two really tokens in that were Snelling and Mazer. So, what you can do about that one. And then Pintar, who I agree with Eli, I still think is the best hitter, best overall prospect out of everyone in Arizona right now. Not doing too bad, OPS in just over 600, but he's getting on base at a good clip, stealing some bats, so that's good. And who I was most intrigued to see, as Eli alluded to as well, was Jun Sut Shim. I've been honestly amongst our staffers one of the highest on him, and he has absolutely dropped the ball. I watched back some of his start or his appearance. Can't command much of anything. His fastball velo is down to 90, 91, 92, 93. When he came over, I was hearing high 90s, maybe hitting 100. Obviously, he's not going to hit that right now, but just he's been trending down, and it's not what you want to see. Justin Storm also, I had pretty high expectations so far. Obviously, a small sample size, but I assume he'll figure it out. And then obviously Piedmont and his, as Alex Farrar noted, and is coming up on age 30. Not too hot from him, but hope next coming weeks while Kemp's on his honeymoon, I hope to hopefully get a positive update out of Shim. But maybe if he can hit a 5 or a 6 on the mound or just show some command, I'll get the hope back. But as of now, I think Grant Shepardson might take him over in our list.
It's just so disappointing with Shim, because when we spoke with Rachel Balkovich, she seemed very excited about him reporting to the fall league, fully healthy, along with a couple of other prospects that have missed significant time. And it has just been completely opposite. I'm just repeating what Nate and Eli have already said, but the breaking ball doesn't even look good. The fastball, like you guys said, low 90s, and it's just not gonna work. And Craig Mish sort of alluded to that earlier, I guess right after the trade deadline, that this trade could be a real steal, or it could end up just like this, where the shoulder is just completely cooked, Sixto style, and Miami may not get a single thing out of this player. And obviously, there's just 3 appearances so far in the Arizona Fall League, but it just doesn't look good whatsoever, unfortunately, for that trade.
Yeah. Anyone else has any last words to talk about before we head into our break? Sean, Ethan, anything on the Arizona?
I mean, I'm actually kind of, pretty I think everyone's pretty surprised about Kemp Alderman, honestly, because wasn't, I mean, he at the end of the year, he was doing decent, and I guess he's brought that production over to the fall league, but to, be doing this in the fall league, I don't think anyone had him. I think everyone had him doing decent, maybe not like elite level. I don't know if you would consider it elite, but doing stuff. He's doing things in the fall league. That's
yeah. In a very hitter-friendly environment, it is nice to see him continue that success, like you mentioned, Ethan. But there's just so many players that just hit so well in this league for some reason, and then obviously sometimes doesn't end up. JJ Bleday is a good example of his career really turned around last year after being the Marlins fall star a couple of years ago. But yeah, it is really encouraging to see it. I think if he continues this to begin 2025. We're going to have to rethink our prospect rankings, because the power is legitimate. That's never been in doubt. It's going to be putting the ball in play, attitude, etc. So we shall see. So obviously, to have at least one guy really show out and perform, it's encouraging for the Marlins.
All right. I think that's going to do it for now. We're going to keep it a little shorter. Then after this break, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the World Series. But let's do a little flip fish, Eli.
A special edition of Flip Fish, World Series edition of Flip Fish. And throughout the Marlins season, what we did is we picked players that spent part of their careers with the Marlins and with the opposing team who they were facing in the upcoming series. In this case, we're doing a 3-way. Played with the Marlins, played with the Dodgers, and played with the Yankees at various points in their major league career. I give you guys a general difficulty rating and just some clues based on their baseball reference page. And this is a tough one. There are not a ton to choose from. There were some obvious ones to choose from. I did not go in the obvious direction. I went with an 8 out of 10 on here, a former right-handed pitcher who played with these 3 franchises, born in Canada. There's a hint. And he played for quite a long time. 841 appearances, almost all those out of the bullpen. And the overall numbers were pretty solid, especially in that era, is significantly above league average pitching performance. I guess the hint is that it was a very short Marlins tenure. But think it over. Coming back on the other side, we'll talk a lot more about the World Series. We'll get to more of your questions in the live chat and all that other good stuff you expect from us here on FOF Live. But I just realized that how are we going to break up this? We don't have like a commercial lined up for this. I should have thought ahead on that. So maybe we'll just.
Is there like a clip we have? Is it like a Kevin clip or something? Here.
No, I think. What do you got?
Here, a little break.
We got to end it off right.
All right, there we go. Quick break from Mr. Jazz. We'll talk a little bit more about Jazz also. So who is it? Who is this
It's
Canadian?
Navi got it. That is the correct answer, Paul. Yeah, that is the correct answer, Paul Quantrill.
Yeah.
This might be a stupid question, but related to Cal.
Yeah, that is dad.
That's his dad.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Didn't even know his dad played for the Marlins. It's crazy.
Very, very, very brief Marlins tenure. 6 games out of the bullpen with an 8.44.
Yeah, no wonder I had no clue this guy.
Run.
Well, I'm disappointed in Kevin
know.
because he put together this article recently about these notable players that finished their careers with the Marlins, and Quantrill would have actually been. I don't think he would have cracked the top 10. Maybe an honorable mention because
Hell
he
no.
a long time in the big leagues. He was even though it's not a glamorous position to be a setup man for the most part, he did finish his career with the team in that 2005 season. When you look back at that 05 season, look at all the guys that played for the Marlins that year. It's a lot of star power, even if they didn't all coalesce the way that the team had hoped that season.
Well, speaking of star power, Eli, I think it's time to talk a little bit about the World Series because this is the most star-studded World Series we have seen in quite a while. So I want Nate to cover his ears and we'll get to Nate's whole headspace about this. But it is the Dodgers and the Yankees, probably the biggest World Series that we've seen in quite a long time. 2 biggest teams, maybe in all of sports, going at it for the World Series. Whoever wants to give a little preview, Kevin, talk to us a little bit here. There's former Marlins on both sides. Give us a little bit about your take on this World Series and how both got to this place.
Yeah, I think you said it. Star-studded power on both teams, and I mean even injured players for the Dodgers with Clayton Kershaw out. And yeah, I mean you have 50-50 with Shohei, Juan Soto, who's been really good in the postseason, former Marlin, obviously Giancarlo Stanton, who I believe was ALCS MVP. Aaron Judge has struggled a little bit. Let's see if he gets it going a little bit in the World Series. He's going to a pretty hitter-friendly environment in LA, and then obviously New York is very hitter-friendly. So should be a fun one. I'm interested to see how the pitching matchups kind of work out here. I know these 2 teams are kind of depleted with the pitching, especially the Dodgers. So I'm excited to watch it, and it's going to be Miggy Rowe versus Jazz Chisholm Jr. I didn't think anyone would have had that on their bingo card going into the year, that these 2 Marlins who have been feuding for a while now are going to face each other in the World Series, and one of them is going to get a ring.
I count 7 potential and some surefire Hall of Famers in this World Series, and those 4 that are pictured there, I think Garrett Cole is a potential Hall of Famer. Giancarlo Stanton is a potential Hall of Famer. Clayton Kershaw obviously heard that that's a Hall of Famer, and I think that's 7. So yeah,
Freddie Freeman.
I'm sorry, that's another one I missed. Freddie Freeman, another surefire Hall of Famer. So that's
Rojas.
8. Miguel Rojas. That is 8.
I'm getting a text right now from Alex Carver. He says Alex Vesia, stud, Hall of Famer.
Alex Vesia, I'm not sure if he will be back, but there are a lot of former Marlins, obviously the ones you guys mentioned. I think Austin Barnes will make the World Series roster as well. Vesia was left off the NLCS roster due to an injury.
So was Miggy Rowe.
If he will be back, obviously Miggy Rowe too. It doesn't sound like Miggy Rowe will be back. Hearing Dave Roberts talk about it, doesn't sound like he will make the World Series roster. But nevertheless, there will be some former Marlins star power in this World Series, and it should be fun.
I got an interesting question talking about Hall of Famers in the series. Do you guys think that Blake Trinan even makes on the ballot for 1 year?
Oh, okay.
He'll be on the ballot.
He's
I was
fairly underrated.
thinking that the other day.
Does he get enough votes to stay? So he needs 5% of the vote to stay on the ballot.
Yeah, I mean he's not going to get in, but I
No,
wonder.
right. I mean, it's funny because Jorge Posada didn't even stay on the ballot after 1 year. That was ridiculous. So I don't know. I can't trust voters these days. I don't know what would happen. Blake Trinan, maybe he accumulates a little bit more postseason success. I can see a world, but no, unfortunately, relievers. You can ask Eli about relievers in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that.
Tough.
Well,
I want to hear Eli's thoughts on this series. You know, Yankees. I know you're close to the Yankee over there in Yankees and the Dodgers big series. Just what do you think? It's been a long day for me. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one angle that I like about this is how many of these guys are in pursuit of their first ever World Series ring. There's not quite as much because with the Yankees, I should say, this drought has been ridiculous. 15 years since they last made it to the World Series. So obviously nobody on this Yankees team was on that team when they previously won the World Series. They've had players like Judge, like Garrett Cole, for example. Cole got so close several times with. Was he there when the Astros won in 2017? Garrett Cole? No, I think he was there in 18.
He was there in 19.
Right after that.
Yeah, 19 as well.
Yeah. So guys like him, there's just not a ton on this roster. Freddie Freeman obviously won it with the Braves, and then he came over to the Dodgers afterwards. Aside from Mookie there and Clayton Kershaw, who's injured, among the guys that are actually going to influence this series very heavily, most of them are chasing their very first ring. And I find that to be a really satisfying angle to it. And just the fact that these were the two number one seeded teams in their respective leagues. It has been a long time since the teams with the best records in those leagues actually made it through to the World Series. There are some years where those are Mickey Mouse regular season records that you get to a point in the postseason and you don't necessarily believe those teams have the highest championship equity. In this case, these teams were extremely deep and well-rounded. The Dodgers have had to wither extensive damage to their rotation depth. So you could say in this moment, they're not a super balanced team because of those rotation injuries that they've had. Still, all things considered, I think the drop off between these teams and almost all the other postseason teams would, I find this just really satisfying. Just the quality of players involved on both sides and the depth of the rosters that they have, all things considered. And I think compared to the alternatives to having the Mets in or the Guardians and the teams that push these teams to in the championship series, I don't know. It's hard for me to be completely unbiased. But I do feel that this is just a really satisfying matchup. It's a big contrast between last year in particular, last year's postseason, where the D-backs made it all the way to the World Series after barely sneaking into the postseason in the first place. And then you had a Rangers team that had been looking so good early in the year, but had been in this really extended malaise entering the playoffs as well. It's not just because these are really big market teams. I feel this is really compelling content to watch and to follow right here. So I think that people are going to be pretty satisfied with it, and it's going to draw in more people that are not fans specifically of these teams. To the casual fan, I just think this is a big win for the general baseball watching population.
Oh yeah, the ratings I think will probably be the highest in probably decades for this. And would you guys agree that this is the two best teams in baseball right now playing for the World Series? It's not maybe lucky teams that getting in. It's you guys maybe believe, all right, this is actually the best going up against the best.
Well, aside from the Marlins, I agree. I think these are the two best.
I think it's the two best lineups for sure. I can't say it's the best pitching staffs either.
Yeah.
I mean, the Yankees, what they've been able to put together in their bullpen is incredible. Brian Cashman really would deserve that ring. But I can't say best two teams, but I think the Dodgers are, honestly. But they are for sure, no doubt about it, the two best lineups in the postseason. That was evident in the NLCS and the ALCS easily. When you have three Hall of Famers, 1, 2, 3 at the top, it's just hard to beat. So I like LMF said, I think this will be the highest rated World Series since 2016. That was a really highly rated World Series that Cubs and Indians won. I think this one will top that one by far.
Isaac, but talking about pitching stats, what do you think about if the Dodgers pitching staff was fully healthy? Because they have like 5 starters, like Kershaw, Glasnow, Gonsolin, Gavin Stone. I mean, those are quality starters. So I do feel like the Dodgers probably, in my opinion, are probably the best roster in baseball by far.
Yeah, shoulda, woulda. I wish we were able to see that full team healthy, man. It would be a real treat. Even in the bullpen too, they have some guys. I think it would be almost unfair to have that full team healthy in this in any postseason 3-game.
So before we get into maybe how each team, what they need to do to win the World Series, we do talk a little bit about the elephant in the room. These are two of the highest payroll teams in baseball. So I want to give Nate the floor and maybe talk about what it means for baseball. We're having the World Series as the two highest maybe teams on payroll, to maybe biggest teams in the whole sport going at it.
Well, yeah, I'm happy you're kidding me about this one. I've already voiced my opinion in the chat, but yeah, like everyone's been saying, it will be probably the best World Series ratings wise since 2016. It's going to be don't get me wrong, it's going to be incredible baseball. You have at least 8, like I said, Hall of Famers on combined between both teams, and then Miguel Rojas, who is going to be on the fringe. But I'm just a guy that just in most of all the other sports, I personally loved last year between the Rangers and the Diamondbacks, teams that the D-backs haven't been there since early 2000s. Rangers obviously have those 2 heartbreaks in the early 2010s, and they haven't been there in a long time. D-backs obviously don't invest everything, so it's kind of like college football, I guess. You want to compare it to that. The teams get the best recruits, always going to be in it, which is why people want to drag college football a lot, like the Bamas and the Clemsons and all them. So this one it's kind of a drag, obviously not to watch, but just the teams that, like you said, they obviously deserve it. Their owners invest in the team. They have a huge fan base and they get a lot of money. So they're gonna have the best chance, and here they are this year. So it's the first time it's been like this in a while, honestly. But I just like mainly baseball to have teams that come out under the radar. Like the 2019 Nationals were a great story. I think the Guardians being in this year with having the drought since of course the 40s would have been a great story. And of course you go back to the Cubs of 2016, even those early Astros teams after tanking and being horrible. So it's going to be incredible baseball. I would have preferred to see an underdog story, or just even a Subway Series would have been awesome to see. But I'll still be watching, and I'm gonna be definitely keeping out for the Jazz Miguel Rojas battle.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll start with you, Kevin. Let's start with maybe the Yankees. What do the Yankees have to do if they want to get ring number 28? What do you think is maybe the number one aspect for the Yankees if they want to achieve that first ring since 2009?
They really need Aaron Judge to get it going. I mean, he's really struggled, and I think this is the Dodgers team that's going to put up a lot of runs. Isaac said he had 3 Hall of Famers to get your lineup going. You need someone who will most likely be a Hall of Famer at some point in Aaron Judge to get it going, and obviously Stanton and Juan Soto are already getting going. Bottom of the lineup was also, I think, struggled a little bit, but I think that'll fix itself out. Dodgers pitching, again, very thin, so I think the Yankees should be able to take advantage of it for the most part. I know they'll probably have to go with a couple bullpen games at some point in there, and maybe Jack Flaherty on short rest if they need it. So I think Judge really needs to get it going in this series if they want to win, and I think the pitching as well. We'll see what happens there. I know the bullpens had their mishaps at some points, at least during the regular season they did. Not sure if it's been that same case during the playoffs, but I know at times they've looked lights out and at times they haven't. So just kind of find that consistency, I would say. But overall, this is going to be a really fun World Series nonetheless. I think we're going to get a lot of run from both teams. I know the pitching is the same for either team. So I'm very excited to watch this, and then it all begins on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a little bit about that Yankees bullpen. I feel like it's been the really big topic of discussion on social media, apart from maybe all the stars, is how maybe Aaron Boone has been able to go around his way with his bullpen. You have maybe some guys like Clay Holmes hasn't really been that good, but maybe guys like Tim Hill, who started with the White Sox and now looks like has been the best reliever since getting picked up by the Yankees. How do you think maybe that bullpen for the Yankees has to find a way against this Dodgers lineup?
Yeah, you have to go to a resident Yankees fan, Eli.
It is a fascinating subject. So in response to those Clay Holmes struggles during the middle of the season, especially in high leverage situations, they've made Luke Weaver their closer and their highest leverage guy. For the most part, he's been awesome. He's the one that closed out the ALCS finale on top of everything else and has pitched in almost every game of the postseason. They also have, I think, it's a relatively deep group. Aside from Luke Weaver, I don't think there's a single one that unconditionally the Yankees trust. But Tommy Kahnle has had this very fascinating streak. He has thrown only changeups in each of his last 2 appearances. He's thrown 40-something pitches, all of them changeups during that span, which kind of signals something very fishy, as if there might be some sort of elbow injury going on that he's kind of hiding by intentionally only throwing off-speed pitches. It's a choice that I just can't think of any other comp in recent baseball watching memory for somebody in the most important games who's only using one pitch again and again and again. Tommy Kahnle for the last handful of years has been a very good setup guy for both the Yankees and a couple other teams during that span. And at the moment, what he's doing is just enough to get by, but I don't know how sustainable that is. You mentioned Tim Hill and his spotty track record prior to coming to the Yankees, so that makes you worry exactly how sustainable that is going to be over this final series that they have coming up. So far, it's been very great for them to have him in the mix. They potentially are getting Nestor Cortes back from his own flexor strain for this World Series in a limited capacity where he'll be essentially a reliever because he's not stretched out. So that's somewhat of an X factor, Nestor Cortes, and how he'd do in that role. He's been exclusively a starter for the last 3 years or so, ever since breaking out with the Yankees in their rotation. In this World Series, if he's going to contribute, it'll be in the bullpen. I assume no more than an inning or 2 at a time in that role. So Nestor Cortes is kind of an X factor. Hialeah's very own Nestor Cortes, who, like many of these other guys, he's looking for his first ring.
I was going to say something. Talking about Kahnle only throwing changeups, I saw that Tim Hill has similarly only thrown sinkers since like the time he got to the Yankees. Like he's straight only thrown sinkers and 4-seams. So I wonder if that's something that the Yankees are like, hey, your other pitches suck, but this is so effective in the playoffs. You're just going to spam this one good pitch. So I wonder if that's something they're doing.
In general, that philosophy has really taken off among a lot of teams to lean heavily more into your best pitch, more so than we're used to. The fact that for Kahnle in particular, that it's an off-speed pitch and that it's 100% of his pitch usage over the last couple of games, that's what raised the red flag. You're right on Tim Hill that this season overall, combining his sinker and 4-seamer, 95% of his pitches have been one of those fastball varieties. At the same time, because it is his heater,
he froze, right? It's not just me.
Yeah. After heater.
All right, well, keep it out until he comes back.
So, the next topic I was going to bring up is Jazz. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about Jazz and how he's maybe been struggling also in the playoffs. I'll go to you, Nate, really quickly before Eli comes back, see what happens. But Jazz has the opportunity to get his first ring. He had a really hot start when he traded to the Yankees, but it seems like this playoffs he's been, I don't want to say a shell of himself, but has just not been playing good baseball. I think OPS is in the 500s or so. Just what did we see from Jazz this playoff run? Do you think it's going to change at all now at the World Series?
Honestly, from Jazz, I've seen a lot of Nick Gordon specials. He's been rolling the ball over to second base a lot. I'm not even kidding. I think 50% of the at-bats I've seen from Jazz have been either a rollover or a strikeout. So I said it during the postseason, man. I'm a big fan of Jazz, always have been. But it's the only big moment I can really recall Jazz stepping up in was last September against the Braves when he had that grand slam in back-to-back days. He was a ghost in last year's playoffs in Philly, and this year when everyone's talking about him, Kansas City fans were absolutely ruthless to him. And he kind of just hasn't done much of anything, honestly, besides tweet and talk after the game. So who knows? Maybe he's going to save it all for the World Series and have some ridiculous moments. I mean, when that guy's hot, it's fun to watch. If he hits a bomb in Yankee Stadium, that's going to be an electric factory. So I'll be excited to see that. But I mean, I don't know. It's really been since his rookie year. He's always talked a lot, and when it really doesn't matter, he's kind of doing it. And then, like I said, last year's postseason, this year's postseason, kind of been a show of himself. So I hope he picks it up. But I mean, if you're going to talk, you're going to walk the walk. That's all it is.
Yeah. And we'll go from that until Eli comes back. We talked about maybe what the Yankees have to do. Now we'll go a little bit and maybe what the Dodgers have to do to win this series. Again, looking for their first World Series since 2020. But again, maybe some people might not count that as a World Series ring since it was only 60 games. So looking for their first World Series in about 30 for the Dodgers. Ethan, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about the Dodgers. Shohei, Mookie, Freddie Freeman, Tommy Edman, who just had an incredible CS. What do you see from the Dodgers, and maybe what aspect are you looking at for them to get that next ring?
It's going to be very interesting. It'll be a very interesting series, and the Dodgers, they need everything, all their bats to come alive. If they really want to take down that Yankees pitching staff and even that bullpen. Because the Yankees have, I guess, transformed their bullpen into some pitching farm. But Shohei needs to be on top of things. I mean, Freddie Freeman's been missing for the last couple of games, right? He's been injured a little bit.
Yeah, he's been injured. I believe it's foot.
So Freddie Freeman's been injured, so I don't, if he gets at it, that'll help. Mookie Betts, they got a lot of great pieces in their lineup that they could use, and they just need an all-around team effort in the World Series. And the pitching, it needs to be. You got to pitch, and you got to make sure the Yankees do not. No one gets hot. You don't want Jazz to get hot. You don't want Judge to get hot. You want to keep them like they've been.
Yeah, Eli, we were talking about Jazz for a bit. Now a bit on the Dodgers. I had Nate talk about Jazz. If you want to add anything else or anything at all to a little Jazz talk, or you want to go straight a little bit about the Dodgers.
How much time do we have left? Because I have a lot to say about Jazz.
Oh boy,
he's just like such a complicated guy, because publicly he speaks so much about wanting to be in this exact position, being with a team like this, under the brightest of all spotlights, and how he was going to thrive in this situation. It has not gone according to plan. It's gone the other way, where you can very visibly see him getting away from what should be his best habits and just having really poor quality at bats and simply not executing his swing the way that he should, and that he was with the Yankees when they acquired him originally, and how he was throughout the regular season when he was super valuable for them. So he has a lot to prove, I guess, and really fortunately for him, he's had this strong supporting cast that has helped them get to this point in the first place. If they flamed out, for example, against the Guardians in that series, with him barely hitting anything at all while playing every single day at third base, the Yankees have given him that opportunity. They have believed in him. Their faith in him has not been shaken one way or the other, but he'd be somebody very easily that could have been scapegoated if the team had not made it this far. And I think he still could be if he doesn't pick it up a little bit, if he doesn't have a couple impactful moments as an offensive player at some point during the series right here. He's also, I don't know if people saw this, but the Players Tribune put together this series of comic strips about his professional baseball journey, where they made it a point. They certainly ran by it for him for approval on this. They made it a point to point out how he very vaguely referred to his time with the Marlins, about how his joy came and went. And they show this picture of him dejected in the Marlins clubhouse, and seemingly trying to bring adversity into this conversation that I don't think really existed, that he has certainly milked as much as he can, that to get to this point. He has overcome a lot. And at the end, saying that the Yankees already have a king in Judge, but I'm happy being the prince, as if he feels he's second in line to be somebody that of note on this Marlins team, on this Yankees team that is just stacked all over the place. He wanted this, and he got it, and now people are going to forget completely about the DS and the CS struggles if he has a really effective World Series right here. It's been just a fascinating ride for him. Everything, especially the fact that he's been playing this position that he had no previous experience with, and for the most part, it's gone pretty well. I'll show that big for people to see. My passion got me to the league, but my joy came and went. At the start of my career, my joy came and went, and that's him, of course, in a Marlins uniform. I hope for the best for him, certainly. It's just been a really rocky ride to this point. And as one of the few the only notable position player the Marlins that the Yankees, the Knicks have up 3 times already. It's the only notable position player that the Yankees actually acquired at that trade deadline. Fair or not to him, that just put more of the pressure on him to kind of stabilize things. So we will see how it goes. But he is certainly another X factor in this series just because of how low the bar has been so far. And yet we know how high his ceiling is over brief stretches when he is really locked in and staying true to his immense natural ability.
Yeah. I don't think we have enough time to talk about John Birdie, but let's talk a little bit. We do have to talk about the Dodgers side. We spent a good amount on the Yankees. We do have to talk about the Dodgers. And, of course, maybe the first player that comes to mind is Shohei Ohtani. How he'll have a whole country watching this World Series with just, triple-double, quadruple the viewership numbers. Kevin, with Ohtani, just how important is he having him in this World Series? What do you believe it means for baseball, having the draw of Ohtani in the biggest series in all of baseball and the biggest mainstream moment for them?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, this is a guy who, as you said, has a whole country watching him, which is insane to think about. When you think about growing the game, Shohei Ohtani's at the forefront of that, just with how good he is, what he's been able to do already in such a, I guess you could even say, short time in Major League Baseball. It kind of feels like that, but he's been here for a pretty long time now, honestly. But he's going into a very good situation in LA with Mookie, with Freddie Freeman, and the rest of that team, which is stacked. And I mean, if they win it this year, it won't be the last time they win a World Series, in my opinion. I mean, this is a good team to do it multiple times while Ohtani is a Dodger. And again, it has to be noted, he's only doing this hitting. He's putting up the numbers he's putting up as only a hitter right now. Imagine next year when he comes back as a pitcher and does what we've been seeing him do beforehand, where I believe he was receiving Cy Young votes and he won the MVP for how good he was on both sides of the ball, something that we hadn't seen in a very, very, very long time. So he's extremely important. They really need him. He gives you a little bit of everything on the field, power, great bat to ball. He actually 50 stolen bases, folks. So he's the definition of a stud, as our friend Alex Carver would say. So yeah, they really need him this postseason. He's been really good. I think he got off to a little bit of a slow start, but then he really, really picked it up quickly, especially in this New York series. So against the Mets. So it'll be cool to see him in Yankee Stadium in a packed house, and even in LA during the World Series. Their first time they're making it in a pretty while. And I think since 2020, I want to say it was the first time they make it since then. So it's been a while, I want to say.
Yeah. Speaking of Ohtani, 50-50 really quickly, his home run ball went for $4.3 million. I have to mention that, $4.3 million for a baseball. But yeah, insane.
Well, you're our resident expert on that, Daniel. How much higher is that, or lower? How does that compare to what your estimation was when it was?
I would have liked a solid 5. I want a solid number. I don't like 4.392. I would have liked 5 on the dot. I would have liked a handshake from Ohtani, a jersey, a signed bat, a ball, a kidney, a foot, everything from him. But yeah, it's incredible. That's so much.
Jesus,
that's
man,
that's half of the Marlins payroll at the end of last season. Half of the payroll.
Yeah.
Well, it is more than the salary of a lot of the players on their roster right now. Like moving forward, their highest paid players entering next year, it's Sandy, it's $17 million. They're still paying Avi $12 million. And then the next highest salary will probably be Jesus Luzardo. In arbitration, he'll get $6 million something. Basically, every other player on their roster right now is going to be making less than that during the 2025 season, the entire season. And that is how much. Now, this is being split a couple different ways because it was auctioned by Golden. They get a cut of this. And my understanding is there was a dispute between who actually owned the ball and who caught the ball, that maybe the resolution was they're splitting that between 2 different people, if not straight down the middle, then something similar to that. Which means that I don't think any
article, it's going into an account, and then whoever wins that lawsuit will claim that $4.3 million. So Golden's putting it into, I believe, a secure account, and then they're going to figure out, all right, whoever wins this lawsuit at the end and gets full ownership will get it. So it's a $4.3 million legal battle for that, which is incredible to say. But yeah, a little more.
I'm intrigued to see how this price point will compare with the Connor Norby 2020 ball next year, in September of next season. I guess off the top of my head, I guess he's the best candidate on this roster, right, to accrue a lot of both, because X is not going to hit home runs no matter what, even though he has a gajillion steals. Then next up in this farm system, quietly, Augustin Ramirez last year in the minors as a catcher, he had 20-something homers and 20 steals. So if he does spend all of next year on the roster, maybe he's a sneaky candidate. I think 50-50 is out of reach for these guys. But at the same time, people really enjoy counting up these totals, guys that can do a little bit of both. So I guess Augustin Ramirez might actually be the sneaky candidate the Marlins have to, if not chase this record, maybe get halfway there, 25-25 in a dream scenario.
But yeah, Eli, I think this is a perfect time. We'll go into predictions for the World Series. Of course, wins, how many games, and MVP for the World Series.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Yeah, prediction time. We're going
As
to
2024 prediction winner.
No,
yes,
yeah.
Daniel's our regular, not just regular season. We needed to go into OT to break that tie between him and one of the super subs. So his wild card predictions put him over the top to be the champ here. This is just for fun. You know, we'll be posting this afterwards, but not going to count this towards any 2025 standings or anything like that. Simply going with who wins the series, how many games, series MVP, right there. Each of those three. Other than that, I guess we're ready to go. I have the background. I have the music right here. Let's do it.
All right, starting us off, as always, Mr. Kevin.
I'm going to go with the New York Yankees winning the World Series in 6 games, and Mr. Juan Soto will be the series MVP.
Ooh, I like that. Intern Sean.
My prediction is pretty much what Kevin just said, but I have Yankees in 7. I also have Soto winning it, the World Series MVP, and I also think he gets $600 million in free agency.
All right, Nate.
This is going to be incredible baseball. I want nothing more to see Giancarlo Stanton raise that trophy, but not this year. The Dodgers will win in 6 games and take home series MVP. Can't overthink it. It's going to be Shohei Ohtani.
All right, I'll go. Have the Dodgers winning it in 6 games. I'm going to go with unorthodox MVP, just like it was in the NLCS. But this time, I'm going to go with Teoscar Hernandez, World Series MVP. Eli.
I have the Yankees winning this series. That was my prediction at the start of the postseason, so I'm going to stick with it in hopes that I'm proven right. Everybody at all levels are just hoping for a very long series that goes down to the wire, and I think we're going to be deprived of that. The Yankees will take care of business in just 5 games against the favorite Dodgers, because I think above all else, I'm a sucker for those celebrations that actually happen at home. And for the Marlins, this is the 4th time already with that. For the Yankees to clinch this World Series at home, they'll have to get done in 5 games or less because they host those middle 3. With Series MVP, let's not forget the pitchers in here. And Garrett Cole almost certainly will start 2 games in this series. Game 1, we already know, and presumably Game 5 as well. So if Cole pitches very well in both of those times, I think that is going to be enough to override all those high-profile position players. Garrett Cole, Series MVP for the Yanks, ending their drought.
And last, not least, Ethan.
Let's do the Dodgers in 6, and I think Freddie Freeman's going to come back from injury, win that World Series MVP. I think that's what I'm going to go with. It's going to be, I guess, a good series. Let's just say.
Nice there, Freddie Freeman, of course, with the World Series experience, World Series ring. Should be a really fun series. Again, probably the most highest rating one we'll see since that Cubs one. Again, Dodgers, Yankees. But of course, everyone's going to see it's who they're going to choose for their manager. We'll see what happens there. Maybe we should have that prediction for that, but maybe we'll do it next week. But that's going to do it for us. For myself, Daniel, Kevin, Nate, Ethan, Eli, Sean, Isaac, who joined us earlier. This is FOF Live, presented by you super subscribers.
Have a wonderful evening.